And we're live. Can middle-aged geek girl let me know whether this is coming through okay or whether I'm just wasting my time on a Saturday morning? Let's see how we go here. 12 seconds in, and we've got nobody on the live stream. Wonderful. I will wait for somebody to turn up, and hopefully everything will be fine. Sounds good? Great. Thank you very much. So there's lots on the show. It's not just about Wakanda and Talakan. Going to be a lot of things on here. I've got a whole bunch of movie reference books to talk about. I've got a really great haul of a classic television series, which is going for crazy low money here in Australia. And yeah, we're going to have a really great time of it as soon as somebody shows up. We got four people. We got four people in the chat. Terrific. Wonderful. Cheers. I've had 3 espressos this morning. So anything can happen in the next half hour. Yeah, I'll tell you the story. There's a story at the moment. There's a drama at our house, which is of concern, but we're going to handle it. We've got a stray cat. A stray cat turned up at our house yesterday. A ginger cat, which might be an older female cat. It's definitely a female cat. Hey, Lee. And it's kind of begging at the back door. It looked a bit hungry, so we left out some water and some food for it. And I know you're not supposed to, but the poor little bastard was hungry. There's a photo of it. That's what the cat looks like. And I nicknamed it Vagabond because it's a vagabond. And it's still out in the back, under the patio at the back of the house. I've given it food and I've given it water. We're going to take it up to a vet's to see whether it's got a microchip in its neck and if it's somebody's pet. And hi, Anthony, how you going? Yeah, so we're kind of looking at that, and it's quite an affectionate cat. It snuggles up to Sal. I opened the back door this morning, and it raced in. It ran around the man cave here, and I had to pick it up to get it out of the house. So it's definitely a domesticated cat, but we can't adopt another cat. We've got 2 already, and two's kind of our limit financially. And so after we do the live stream, we've got to basically find a vet to take the cat down to so I can get the microchip read and people can find out who it belongs to. So, yeah, a little bit of drama there. Nonetheless, we're doing the right thing by it because we are definitely cat people. Hey, Echoes, how you doing? Yeah, Echo in Germany here. Uh, yep. Kanda says, I get a new trailer park strays every day. Wife refuses to stop feeding them. Yeah, yeah, Sally really wants to keep the cat, but we probably can't afford it. But yeah, so we got the random stray. Fortunately, the weather's warm enough that it can kind of stay outside until we work out the best thing we can do about it. We're going to go into local Facebook groups and see what we can do. You got to work on Saturday, Echo. Thanks for being here. I did a joke. Does anybody want to see the joke that I did on Facebook, which stunned a lot of people? Thank you, Echo. So if I get anybody who wants to see the joke I did on Facebook, it kind of it's the joke leads into people's perception of YouTubers and what YouTubers do, and more importantly, what YouTubers make. America's most replaceable pet cat. Yeah, but we had our first cat for about 19 years. Jack, we had him for 19 years. We've had Jill for about 12 years. We're keepers when it comes to cats. We love them and we find them very companionable. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, basically what I did was I told people that the AdSense revenue I get from YouTube came in, and I showed them this, which is Australian money. Lots of Australian money. I said that it's good when YouTube revenue comes in. Look at all that. What I didn't tell them was this is not real money. It's actually imitation money that people burn at Chinese funerals so their loved ones have money in the afterlife. So I got these for like $1.50 for all of this fake Australian money, which it's hilarious. I may well laminate the back wall of the man cave with this stuff. But yeah, so that's what Australian $100 notes really look like. And on the back, we got Nelly Melba. But yeah, so how is everybody? That joke went down really well. Echo says, I think for around 40 years to get me for myself. Yep. Cats are wonderful. Yeah, people think that YouTubers make a lot of money, but we don't. Some do. I mean, obviously, Mr. Beast does, and PewDiePie and all those guys do. But what we make is pocket money here, and that's kind of cool. I mean, I'm okay with that because I do this more for having the fun of doing it, keeping myself active, engaging with the community, sharing the movies I really like, and I think people should check out. But yeah, there is a perception that basically YouTubers are like this, which is rubbish. No, that's not Sean Connery. Who is it? Let me have a look. I've got to take the glasses off to take a look at this because it's tiny writing. John Monash, who was the Australian general during World War One, who basically was in charge of the Australian Army during World War One. First Jewish Army general in Australia too. Yeah, saw a funny thing about it. We're going to replace QE2 on the $5 bill. Take your pick of any number of colonialists. Yeah, I want to have a bin chicken. A bin chicken is an ibis, an Australian ibis, which is my favourite Australian bird. Why is nostalgia could be a trap? Echo. Okay, I'll tell you. Being of a certain age, guys of a certain age, particularly, can get trapped in nostalgia with their media. There's all the stuff they liked as a kid. There's all the stuff they liked as a teenager. There's all of the stuff that really engaged them when they first fell in love with movies and television. And I get a lot of comments about that stuff. Some of the best videos I've done, as far as views are concerned, have been really deeply nostalgic videos, and I'm kind of okay with that. I mean, yeah, it's helping the channel, but nostalgia can be a trap because you can get so locked into that headspace of just looking at old things and just doing the nostalgia thing that you can miss a whole bunch of new stuff that's coming out, which is really good, really useful, really inclusive, really valuable, and really it's taking cinema forward. So you can kind of it can anchor you down in the past. And yeah, I watch a lot of old movies. I'll be totally honest about that. But I think that doing that alone is a trap. It locks you into a headspace. It locks you into a worldview. It makes you more inclined to think that anything new is shit. And it isn't. There is so much excellent stuff coming out now that we really should appreciate and value and enjoy. I agree, Lee. Yeah, it's incredibly short sighted. Yeah, I mean, okay, you can like Soil and Green and things like that, but I think that's for so many people, it's like music. Listening to new music helps as well. I mean, I listen to an Indigenous band in Australia here called King Stingray, which is doing some really interesting stuff. It's accessible to me as an old fart, but it's really good stuff. And I think that nostalgia is a trap if you let it be. I think that having an idea of the breadth and the depth of cinema's been around for about 130 years now. And we really are starting to get a sense of that arc from early silent films like Méliès and the Lumiere brothers and all that kind of thing, onward to really new stuff. I like having a good idea about that journey and about that range and about how cinema has evolved technologically in the way it tells stories, in the grammar, in the way that um, computer special effects can be incorporated into a story rather than just be pretty things for people to look at. Yes, can suck in movies. That's when CGI is the story rather than the story being the story and the CGI serving the story. that's the thing is um, CGI is just a tool. It can be used well, it can be used badly. You can use a shovel to dig a irrigation trench, or you can hit someone over the head with it. It's like that. CGI. It's great that people are experimenting and pushing the boundaries of what you can make seem realistic. Even things like Unreal Engine 5, which is the computer game image and graphic generated software that's just been released and it's freeware. The company Unreal has released it to everybody. You can make realistic landscapes and realistic things and realistic people using that software. And but if you don't have a story, you've got nothing. Rayo and Spider-Man: Far From Home. Yeah, the thing is that the story is all, and CG inevitably has to serve the story. If it doesn't, you're just playing with yourself. Now, I'll show you the box set I've got. We'll start out with that. I'm going to do a review of uh, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever a little bit later. But I saw this box set around the place. Amazon had it, and I was going to buy it from Amazon. Peter Cushing said, pretty sure it comes to horror films, primarily from the 60s and 70s. Up to the mid 80s is my cutoff point, maybe a very rare new one. I'm hearing good things about Terrifier and Terrifier 2. I'm going to wait for a little bit before I watch them because I think Umbrella's going to release them on a nice Blu-ray. But I'm hearing really great stuff. David Fincher used CGI and Zodiac for the overhead shots of the taxi murder, quite subtle use. Yeah. Hi, Richie's too. Maybe you can use CG in this new YouTube interface. Is something halfway usable. Middle-aged Geek Girl says, I've only heard bad things about Terrifier. I'm going to check it out because somebody mentioned it on the channel, on the comments of the channel once. And I'm hearing some interesting things about it. So I'm going to just see it. Low budget horror filmmaking is something that I want to kind of stay on top of. But anyway, so this box set really it's got it stars an actor that I really like, an incredibly influential series as well, and it's the full box set of The Fugitive, starring David Jansen from the 1960s. Dr. Richard Kimball gets falsely accused of his wife's murder and goes on the run to find the one-armed man who was at his wife's funeral. Hey Keith, how you doing? So I got that. Look at it, enormous, 33 discs, 4 seasons full of The Fugitive, and the guest actors in this were next level. This is the movie, the series that influenced things like the Incredible Hulk TV series, Dusty's Trail. Any number of TV series were influenced by this. It was kind of slightly influenced by Route 66 itself. So anyway, I look at this on Amazon.com.au, and it's like $80, and I still think that's a good price. And I've just bumped the screen that's holding the camera. Yay! So yeah, so I look at it, it's like $88 Australian at Amazon. So I think I'm going to go to JB Hi-Fi, which is the big box store here, which still does DVDs and Blu-rays. They're selling it for $39.95. So I got it from them. So I got this whole box set of The Fugitive for like $40 Australian. Always violated mum's bedtime rule to watch this. Yeah, I'm going to dip into it. I'm going to watch individual episodes. I might try to do one a day for a while and just see how I go. Watch the first season. And again, they're crazy good supporting cast in this. And the good thing is you can have a rotating supporting cast, so actors can come in, do one episode, really nail their role, and support David Jensen, who was superb in the role. Yeah, first time live streamer, Keith. Thank you. I popped your cherry, mate. That's great. So yeah, that guy says some people in Germany say CGI kills good movie making. That's kind of weird because I don't believe it has. I think the good movie making is going to remain good movie making. There are people who have a passion for film and a passion for storytelling, and they will use CG to support that story. There are things that are basically complete CG. And I'm looking at you, Black Adam. I think Black Adam was fun, but it's incredibly CG heavy. and the CG as much as anything else becomes the story because there's not much depth and leveling to Dwayne the Rock Johnson in most of his roles. Which brings me to Bill Conrad, awesome fugitive narrator. Bill Conrad was great in a lot of things. He was in The Naked Jungle. He was in The Killers, the 1946 version. He was also Cannon on TV. Yeah, Bill Conrad, fantastic. So that brings me to Black Panther Wakanda Forever. We went and saw it at Gold Class. I had the reclining seats, and I ate some vegetarian spring rolls while I was watching it. Had a good time. I like this movie. It's in some senses it's a kind of eulogy for Chadwick Boseman as well as T'Challa, his character of the Black Panther. The movie does justice to that. There's a I won't spoil that, but I like it. It works really well, and bringing in the new stuff. I mean, I've been a fan of Namor, the Submariner, since he looked like this. Black Widow was a good movie, and yeah, absolutely, I enjoyed Black Widow as well. So I've liked Namor since he looked like this, and now with the new version, with the Mexican actor Tenoch Huerta playing Namor, he looks like this, and I'm fine with that. Um, I probably won't go into a full review on Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I enjoyed it. I think Ryan Coogler is a fantastic filmmaker, and he really brings his A game to this. The fact that they had to kind of change the movie halfway through production because Chadwick Boseman died was an enormous challenge, but I think they were up for it. Now, I really like what they did with Namor, making him a Mesoamerican and kind of having that colonizer narrative works well. The best thing for me in the movie was Talokan, the underwater city where Namor lives and where he led has been leading his people and keeping them safe from the surface world. In Aquaman, they had Atlantis, and Atlantis was kind of a tiered two-dimensional world. They didn't use the three dimensions really well. But Talokan in Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a 3D underwater city. People travel through it like people travel through the International Space Station. Up and down don't really matter in an underwater city when you can breathe underwater. And that kind of makes it a really interesting place. It looked like a lived-in city, unlike anything I've seen since Wakanda first appeared in the Marvel movies. Hey, not a villain of the story. Yeah, hi, how you doing? But yeah, I love that three-dimensional city. The production design is next level, and I think that this is the big differentiating thing between Marvel and DC. I kind of had this flash on that, which is that DC's villains are macho as hell. They're kind of big super muscle brutes. They're kind of bad because they're bad in a sense, even though Black Adam does tend to moderate that a little bit. They're kind of two-dimensional macho villains, whereas in Marvel, the villains aren't alpha male bullshit artists the way that real life gives us. I mean, you can understand where Namor's coming from. You can understand why he's doing what he's doing, even though he is coming from a place of fear. And he kind of clashes with Wakanda because they're coming from a place of grief. Their leader has died. His mother, Ramonda, played by Angela Bassett very, very well, is the new leader of Wakanda. They're being threatened by this other nations, particularly America and France, who do some egregious bits of kind of covert ops against them. And why aren't I bouncing off the walls with three espressos? Because I'm a professional caffeine addict. I can manage it. And they're good espressos too because I get my beans from a good, reliable place. I grind them myself and I make my own coffee. An older ginger cat happened to you too. She's pregnant and she's going to have kittens. Wow. That's next level problem. Fortunately, Vagabond doesn't seem to be pregnant. And But she does need a home, and what we're trying to do is get her back to what may be her home already, or at least get her to a place where somebody can adopt her because um, that's really really necessary, and it really has to happen for the poor little thing. We're incredibly sympathetic to stray pets, and it breaks our heart a little bit when we see a lost pet. Calling the cat OJ. Yeah, I'll call this one Vagabond because she's a bit of a vagabond. But Sal's kind of bonding with her, which is a little bit worrying. Cats versus dogs movies. Yeah, I never saw them. I'm kind of kitty level CG movies are kind of trying to. I follow down rabbit holes. So I'll watch a whole bunch of Giallo movies at one stage, or I'll watch a whole bunch of film noir, or I'll watch a whole bunch of movies from a particular country. Yeah, I saw that the Uncanny, the one with Peter Cushing in it. Cats aren't dangerous. People are. Cats versus dogs was cute. Yes, the cat is adorable middle-aged geek girl, but we can't unfortunately adopt her. Yeah, Avatar 2 is an interesting one, Echo. I saw the trailer for it on the big screen when I went and saw Wakanda Forever, and it doesn't look like anything more than a colonizer narrative. Yeah, the special effects are next level, and it's yeah, all of that stuff kind of works. But I'm not sure that James Cameron is a good enough storyteller to deal with the way that movies have changed in the 2020s. Hey, Big Rat Killer, thank you for staying up late for the live stream. It's really appreciate it. Let's see what else we got. So what else we got on Wakanda Forever? Yeah. Um, yeah, the thing is, it doesn't feel like a Marvel movie. There are so many Marvel movies where you go, "Yep, this is it." It's kind of like watching Disney live action from the 1960s. It's got that feel um, of a 1960s movie, but and a Disney movie, but Wakanda Forever doesn't feel like a Marvel movie, and I really appreciated that breathing space. Have I seen the Jim and Carl May movies from the 60s? No, I haven't. I know about them with Lex Barker and things like that, but they're not really accessible here. They're hard to find here, particularly with subtitles. So I haven't done a lot of them. I know they were popular. I know Carl May was popular since the 1920s, I think, and his kind of twist on the American West. But yeah, I'll be interested in finding out about them. Middle-aged good girl says, honestly, haven't we all forgotten about the first Avatar movie? No need for a second. Yeah, Avatar blew us away at the time in about 2007, 2008, whenever it came out, because of the way it looked. And we all saw it with the 3D glasses on. And the special effects blew us away because there was pretty much Dances with Wolves with Smurfs. And I don't know that we need another Avatar movie, but clearly James Cameron does. And I think that as a filmmaker, he's gone down that rabbit hole of I'm going to create this world, which I find endlessly fascinating. And I want to share it with the world because I'm a billionaire. And I can understand that. Billionaires never quite know what's right and wrong. They tend to do what they like because people will tell them yes every time they say anything. Could James Cameron just make a small non-effects based film? No. He's locked into making the most successful movies in the world. He did Titanic, and that one went crazy popular. Avatar went crazy popular as a one-off. But I mean, if a second Avatar movie with a decent story had to come out, say in 2010, then people might have engaged with it more. It's an intellectual property that's kind of a one-off, and I don't know that James Cameron realizes that. There's a lot of things plugging it at the moment. We're seeing buses with Avatar signs on them out here. It's a really weird thing. Wow, I'm sorry. Not a villain of the story. I'm sorry I said something on Facebook, and what result was I had Homeland Security come and visit me. I ripped Facebook and Twitter out of the phone and all my home computers. I'm perfectly happy. Absolutely. Yeah, Michael Bay can't make a low budget movie. I saw Ambulance, that movie he did this year, which had Jake Gyllenhaal in it. And yeah, it's an action movie, and there are a couple of interesting character and plot beats in it. But this is the movie where Michael Bay discovered FPV drones and what FPV drones can do, flying around and zipping around. And he overused them enormously in Ambulance because he thinks that everybody in the world hasn't seen FPV drone footage on YouTube, but we have. It's not a bad movie. It's a meathead action film. It's got a couple of interesting character beats, but yeah, it's kind of lots of sound and fury, signifying a little bit, but not too much. Let's see. Made the Carl May movies in different languages for other countries. Yeah, I think they did, but they really haven't pinged much here. Be interesting if somebody like Imprint or Umbrella put out a box set of the Carl May movies from the 1960s, the ones with Lex Barker in them. But I don't know that they will. There's just so much they're mining from English language cinema that at least here and in America, non-English language cinema isn't getting enough love. Lee Lavery, yeah, one of my favorites is Primer. What budget did that have? About 10K. Could be it was a really low budget film, but Primer is interesting. And it's interesting because you have to watch it two or three times to really get it and understand what it's on about. And that's not a bad thing. I think it does what it does really well. And the script is so beautifully textured and layered. It works crazy. I'm going to have to rewatch Primer soon because it's a movie I respect a lot. And it's a movie that, like Coherence, it's a low budget time travel movie, which really follows through on the idea and shows that you can do science fiction without a lot of CG. And I have a lot of respect for people who could do that. Well, in GDR, they have made Western movies as well. Yeah, they've even made them here in Australia. No, I don't think you're afraid, not a villain of the story. I think that, if you don't have Twitter and Facebook, that's fine. For me, it works because it helps the channel engage. It helps me keep in touch with a lot of political and social stuff that's happening here in Australia. It it's good, at least on my feed. Twitter is allowing for Elon Musk being a man baby throwing a global temper tantrum. It's good for me finding out certain things, and I know that a lot of good people are leaving Twitter, which is a deep shame. People like Stephen Fry are leaving Twitter. There's a whole bunch of really useful, creative people who don't want to empower Elon Musk, and I can respect that. But I find Twitter and Facebook useful. Instagram less so. I look at Instagram occasionally, but I don't really post there. Okay, so there's a lot the Quigley movie with Tom Selleck. Saw it once. I'm kind of if I see a movie based in Australia, I want Australian characters, whether they're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. I think Quigley was the last hurrah of a certain kind of movie made in Australia where they had to bring in American stars and English stars to sell the movie. And I'm kind of not particularly in love in that with that as a business model. Lee says, I had a phase of watching low budget time travel films. Triangle was included in that too. Would love some more recommendations in that vein. Yeah, Triangle's great. Triangle punches way above its weight. I've been supporting that one ever since it first came out. Really interesting film. I did a video about it as well. If you look back on the channel, Lee, there will be more time travel movies that I've recommended. To Kill a Mockingbird, Gregory Peck. That didn't stop me wanting to see Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Try not to fall. No, I recommend you see Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, particularly if you saw the first one. Particularly if, like me, you're an MCU fanboy. But I think that it works well as a film and as storytelling as well. And it does talk really interestingly about how developed nations impede and exploit developing nations. There's a nice little kind of narrative thread through there about that, which I really like. What do Hollywood films get wrong about Australia? Pretty much everything. They see kangaroos and koalas. They see us as all outback people. We're not. We're a very sophisticated society. The best coffee shops in the world are here in Australia. I think that let us tell our own stories. I think that's the way to go. There are a lot of Indigenous filmmakers who are telling their stories. There are a lot of Australian film, particularly young filmmakers, who are starting to tell their own stories. I think with any nation, let the people who live in that nation tell their own stories. Yeah, you can set Mission Impossible 2 here in Australia, but if you're doing a movie that's predominantly about Australia, let the people who know the country tell their stories. Let's get our technicians um, trained up and give them some experience. Let our actors and our writers and our directors tell their own stories. Yeah, they get the accent wrong too. Nobody can do an Australian accent. Robert Mitchum came close in a movie called The Sundowners. A couple of other people have come close, but there's a particular cadence to Australian accents that people from other countries just can't do. The Gods Must Be Crazy was a South African film. I think it was the guy who was the lead character in The Gods Must Be Crazy was he spoke Xhosa as a language, and yeah, they. I think that there's a more nuanced view of Australia now, which is great. But I really want us to tell our own stories. Yeah, Peter Cushing. Yeah, let the Irish people tell the Irish stories rather than Americans whose ancestors 800 years ago were Irish. There's a lot of that kind of thing. I mean, about half of my ancestry is Welsh, and I feel a real empathy for Wales. And I loved it when I went there. And I know middle-aged good girl didn't, but I wouldn't call myself Welsh. I think that that Welsh ancestry has served me well, and it gave me a sense of connection, knowing that my family was from Wales. But I don't see it as a as a core part of my identity. Even John Wayne played an Irish boxer in a movie. Yeah, I mean that's it. There's that kind of American nostalgia for Irishness, and yeah, I can see that to a certain extent, but I don't know if it's useful, and I think it may be dismissive of Indigenous Irish culture, if I can call it that, and that's a shame. And also, yeah, English colonizers really messed around with Ireland as they did with Wales, as they did with Australia, and a whole bunch of other things. And yeah, it's I like really hearing other people's stories and seeing other people's stories and getting a sense of how other cultures perceive the world. And for me, that's an incredibly useful function the film does give us. It gives us the ability to see through the eyes of other people. And I've got a crazy respect to that. Hey, son of a red shirt. Hey, yep, Canada. Love Canadians. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I want to try proper poutine. There's been a few poutines around here, but I would love to eat poutine in Canada. Probably won't get the opportunity to, which is a real shame. But yeah, I mean, Canadians and Australians, I think, have got a simpatico worldview. And as kind of second tier world powers, we're constantly fighting against the influences of America and increasingly China. Yeah, it's not easy being the kind of, not the run of the litter, but being like the second child. Yep, John Wayne played Attila the Hun. They killed him. Ricky Rooney played a Chinese man. Ricardo Montalban played an Indigenous American. So glad Hollywood may be getting its something or other. Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing about Namor in Wakanda Forever. Having Tena Huerta playing a Mesoamerican character, which is his indigenous Mexican ancestry. Having that representation, you can't see what you can't be. So if kids who are African American or even African or have a Central American ancestry can see themselves and see their people as powerful and as interesting. I think that's will never make the world a worse place. It will improve the world. It'll improve the way people see the world. The original Mad Max movies are completely Australian production, absolutely echo. And it was a shame when Fury Road had to be made in Namibia because Australia was going through one of the phases where it gets very green, so it didn't look a lot like desert out near Broken Hill. But yeah, I mean, I think that maybe, even though George Miller, the director and producer, was Australian, I think there's an internationalization of Mad Max that I'm not entirely comfortable with. I think Mad Max Fury Road was a great film, but that sense of place and that sense of the relationship colonizer Australians have with the landscape and the way that we see it as kind of scary was one of the really powerful, kind of subliminal parts of Mad Max. Yeah, it is yellowface. If somebody plays outside their thing, it's yellowface, there's brownface, there's blackface. Yeah. Even American movies have British actors playing American characters. Daniel Day Lewis, Tom Wilkinson, for example. Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing is there's a new kind of debate and discussion around who should play certain things. Should straight actors play gay characters because they want to play gay characters, or should the movie makers find gay actors whose careers need a boost and who have the talent and the skills to do it? I tend to lean on the side of there's a reality to gay actors playing gay characters, and there's a reality to people of certain ethnicities playing people of certain ethnicities that you can't get otherwise. There are any number of roles for white people in classic literature. I mean, Shakespeare, there's that, even though there are some colorblind Shakespeares that work really well. And all the classics of literature were predominantly about white people. And so there are no lack of roles for white people, whether they be American, Canadian, Australian, New Zealand, whatever. There are tons of roles for those people. It's the people on the margins that we need to lift and to equalize with other groups in our societies. Yeah, Rock Hudson played mostly hetero characters for his career. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had a career. He would have been Franklin Pangborn or somebody like that. Uh, yeah, that was a crazy, difficult time in Hollywood for people. But that brings me to the sad bit. Kevin Conroy, who did the voice of Batman all through the 90s and into the modern era, died yesterday. And I like Kevin Conroy. I like his voice acting as Batman. So we've got a bit of Batman there. Yeah, that's about right. I'm never going to play Batman. And Kevin Conroy died, and he was apparently really well loved, really nice guy. I found out some interesting things about him today too. I like his voice acting as Batman in the Batman TV series. Let me have a look at Kevin Conroy here. So he was a Mask of the Phantasm. That was a really good one in 1993. Did all of the Superman and Batman's Justice League things. Yeah, he was Batman for many, many people because they were watching the animated Batmans. And he was apparently a really nice guy. Um, he was the first openly gay person to play Batman in any form. He was also, after 9/11 happened, he worked in the soup kitchens and the kind of food distribution places around New York City after 9/11. And yeah, hey, digital pollution. Yeah, and he actually he worked for weeks feeding the first responders and the other people who were doing the rescues around 9/11. And that's to his credit. There's so many things. Eric, thank you very much for the super chat. Appreciate it, mate. Welcome to the club. But yeah, I like Kevin Conroy. I saw him. He was in the Batwoman TV series, playing an older Batman in an alternate universe, and he did a really great grounded job of playing a bitter and somewhat insane Bruce Wayne in that as well. Yep, and yeah, Kevin Conroy was a great Batman. Even though he only ever got to play it once in kind of meat space in physical reality, he was Mark Hamill was the kind of definitive voice actor to play Joker. And one of the things he said today was, if Kevin Conroy was playing Batman, he would always say yes to playing the Joker. Do I know Jennifer Hale? She doesn't say I'm the father of a baby, does she? No. Okay, let me check Jennifer Hale. Canadian voice actress. No. She looks like she did a whole bunch of stuff in. She was the voice of Jean Grey in Wolverine and X Men, Marvel's Capcom. Did some Star Wars stuff, which I've got zero interest in. But yeah, yeah, there are so many great voice actors out there. Like Bell is a great voice actress who's done a whole bunch of stuff. She turns up as a minor character in Wakanda Forever, and I was probably the only person in the cinema of 30 or 40 people. It's a small cinema I saw it in. Who went, "Hey, look, that's like Bell." And yeah, she's a good actress, and it's good to see her getting a little bit of love in the MCU. The other person who turned up in Wakanda Forever that I found kind of interesting because I was looking for white people because I'm that kind of racist prick is Richard Schiff from The West Wing turns up playing an American official in that, and I like what he did with the kind of small role playing the kind of chainmail clad fist of American foreign policy. And if you want to see real villains in Wakanda Forever, they're not the people of color. They're not Namor. They're not anybody else. They are basically the imperial powers, the colonizer powers of the bad guys in this movie. And I found that really interesting and slightly confronting, but I found it very apt as well. And yeah, voice actors don't get enough love. There's a movie about voice actors called In a World, which is basically a slightly fictionalized version of the life of voice actors in Los Angeles. And it's got basically the whole cast is voice actors. And I like that. I like what they did with that because I think voice actors are underrated. And so many of the things we see, computer games and TV series and animated movies, voice actors hold those things up and they never get enough love. Has Matt Hancock been kicked out of the jungle? I don't know who Matt Hancock is. I don't know what you mean by the jungle. But sorry, Keith. But yeah, voice actors are really interesting, and there are any number of people who did voice acting as well in the '60s. Comedians did a lot of voice acting. There was Don Adams before Get Smart came out was doing Tennessee Tuxedo, and people like Larry Storch were doing it as well, and of course Frank Gorshin. All these great comedians and actors did voice stuff. Yeah, okay. Mel Blanc. Yeah, Mel Blanc was kind of the first tier start of voice actors getting some recognition. Professor Strangetree, hello Terry. Always enjoy content and fab to see and hear you live. Thank you very much. Welcome to the club. Lee says, "Oh, he's a Tory MP who's taking part in a TV show instead of doing his job." Yeah, we get a bit of that too. We get them on Dancing with the Stars. Eric, yep, R.I.P. Kevin Conway. Loved him in The Lathe of Heaven. Yeah, he did so many. Kevin, no, it was Kevin Conroy we're talking about, not Kevin Conway. Kevin Conway was a different guy. Peter Cushing said, "Hey, when they use multimedia film stars to do voices instead of giving it to proper voice actors." Yeah, absolutely. I think voice acting is a particular skill, and I think it's a skill that voice actors in particular do really well and get so little love for it. I mean, among certain people like geeks like me, they get a lot of love, but I think there are voice actors out there doing incredibly good work who really don't get what they deserve. And I think that as motion capture becomes more a part of things, they may well end up doing the physicality of it. But I've got a soft spot for voice actors because I think voice is a really underrated part of acting. Nolan North is the best, says middle-aged girl. Yeah, she's in love with a voice actor called Nolan North. In fact, I got a cameo of Nolan North wishing her a happy birthday last month. By the way, 21st of November is middle-aged geek girl's birthday. So if anybody wants to do a shout out on the chat to give middle-aged geek girl the well-deserved love, and yeah, she deserves it. She does enormous amounts to help with this channel. She's the person I bounce ideas off for the channel. She's the secret source in this channel. Is Nolan North better than Jared Harris? I don't know. Well, you'll have to ask middle-aged geek girl. Gallagher, comedian who probably smashed millions of watermelons. He was also racist and anti-Semitic. So to hell with Gallagher. Yep. Happy future birthday, Sally. No, that's okay, Eric. It's all good. They are equally different fields of work. Yeah, she loves quirky actors in various realms, but yeah, Professor Strange didn't like him anyway. Yeah, I think he was very much one note. It was kind of prop comedy, and I think prop comedy is the short bus of comedy in some ways. Pause for a drink. There you go, Sal. You're getting some love there. Happy birthday. Vic, always like to Vic Perrin, the control voice. Yeah, absolutely. In the Outer Limits, the Outer Limits was one of the first science fiction TV series I watched. I watched the episode with the bee lady in it when I was very young. My uncles Roy and John, when I stayed over at my grandparents' place, and they lived with my grandparents. Let me stay up and watch things like Twilight Zone and the Outer Limits and a bit of Star Trek on TV way back when it was small boxes with black and white pictures. And yeah, the Outer Limits always had a fascination for me, and I've got them now on box set, and I really should dive back into them. Middle-aged geek girl, stop shitting on the Welsh. Skippy the Bush Kangaroo in German television. Skippy was crazy popular. I remember I was in love with it when it first came out. And the local shopping centre did a promotion for Skippy back in the 60s where they actually had the wallet. Skippy wasn't a kangaroo, it was actually a wallaby. And they had the original Skippy in store so people could see Skippy, the bush kangaroo, in the store. And I went out the back and I was kind of at the back entrance of the store after the promotion. And they had the wallaby in the back of a kind of open, like a back of a truck with a whole bunch of gum leaves and things that kangaroos eat. And so I got to sort of see Skippy without all the crowds around, which was a big buzz for me at the time. Yeah, Lee, don't let her give you shit about the Welsh. Ty Harden in an Australian TV series, Riptide. Again, this is one of those ones where they brought in American actors. It was filmed around Sydney Harbour and up around Broken Bay, just north of Sydney. Riptide, I think there are some episodes on YouTube. There were a couple of years ago, and I watched some of them. And I love the theme music to Riptide, which Tommy Tico did. Lots of kind of bongo drums in the thing. Really well shot, and the action sequences are shot well. It's done on a crazy low budget. But Riptide we liked a lot because it gave a lot of Australian actors in the 60s gigs. It gave Australian directors and writers and everything else. Has anyone seen the most recent reboot of Twilight Zone? I saw the first season of it, some of that. Couple of good episodes, mostly not. I think that the episode that Jordan Peele directed was really good. But it didn't kind of work for me. I think that there was some really poor scripts in the first season of that Twilight Zone. SOS Charter Boot. It was Riptide. Yeah, another thing about Riptide is it was never really shot on many beaches where there are riptides. I got caught in a riptide once in a beach in Sydney and had to get rescued because I was doing the right thing. I swam across. So riptides go, just hang on, let me do this. So there's the beach. Riptides are a channel in the water like that, which pulls people into it and drags them out to sea. So I was swimming across the riptide to try to get out of it, but I got exhausted and had to get rescued once upon a time. But riptides are crazy powerful. Professor Strange, we're some of the coolest creatures on the planet and some of the most dangerous. Yeah, we have right wing politicians here. They're crazy dangerous. No, the bottom line is with Australian things, you've got to be smart. I mean, I swam in a tank in Darwin with an 800-kilo crocodile. Those things are scary. And swimming I was in a perspex tube with perforations in it, in a tank about 2 meters from an 800-kilo crocodile, which had eaten its girlfriend. So yeah, they're kind of dangerous and they're scary, but it's about like anywhere else. You got to know where you are. You got to know you're in a wild environment. You got to know what to do to stay safe. You don't go swimming in rivers in northern Australia. You don't go swimming on beaches in northern Australia because irukandji jellyfish will either kill you or make you wish you were dead for a week. And snakes, yeah, you can avoid snakes. There are very few innately aggressive snakes because they're the ones that get killed. Snakes will attack if you hassle them. Spiders, you just watch out for spiders. It's kind of in the back of our minds whenever we go outside. If there's a spider around, you avoid it. But that's all. Not really that big a deal. Have I seen the new Man Who Fell to Earth series? No, I haven't seen that yet. I don't think it's come out here. I didn't like the movie. A lot of people love the movie of The Man Who Fell to Earth, but the idea of an alien coming to Earth looking for water when every gas giant in the known universe is surrounded by ice. Um, very, very silly. Is that little cousin of the box jellyfish? Yeah, kind of. The irukandji are like that big, but if you brush against one, they got this crazy neurotoxin in them, which makes you feel like you're being electrocuted and set on fire at the same time. Irukandji are crazy dangerous up in northern waters, which is why people don't go swimming in beaches up around Darwin, for instance. There are things you can do to avoid them. You can cover your entire body in a stocking. Apparently, stockings work really well to stop them stinging. But yeah, Irukandji jellyfish and Irukandji syndrome is a really dangerous thing. There are also some plants. There's a thing called gimpy gimpy, which is this plant that lives kind of underneath the tree cover. It's a ground plant, grows about a meter and a half tall. Leaves are like that big and shaped like that. You brush against them, and basically, it's got silica needles on the leaves, which will attach to your skin and inject a poison. A couple of guys have committed suicide because of the pain of gimpy gimpy. And yeah, it's there's some dangerous stuff around, but there is everywhere. Yeah, bears there in Colorado, but mountain lions seem to do more attacks on humans here. Yeah, probably because people are attracted to pussycats. Do I like the Orville? Yeah, I've seen some of the episodes of the Orville, but I've got so much media to watch. Keeping up on things is kind of difficult because of the channel. I try to cover as much as I can broadly, so I don't get to see enough stuff. We're just flooded with interesting media at the moment, and not everybody can keep up on everything, and that's a bit of a shame. It'd be nice to open the top of your head and download all of the cool stuff there is out there, but unfortunately we can't. Lee Lavery, I'm sorry, but UK has the most terrifying house spiders. Yeah, but we've got huntsmen. Huntsmen are particularly dangerous. I once brushed my hand against a huntsman. No kidding. With its legs, it was like that big. They are scary spiders, but they're not particularly dangerous. But they are enormous. They will eat birds, but that's about it. Hey, Monteval, how you doing? Welcome to the channel. Let's see what we've got here. What else have I got to show you? Well, the Greg, thank you very much. I appreciate the support for the channel. It really is um, uh, welcome, and that's what I want to do with the channel is build that community. Barry Miff, hi Terry, haven't been watching Andor. No, I don't watch Star Wars stuff. I just don't like Star Wars. I don't like the principle of it. that good versus evil and that magic shit doesn't work for me. But yeah, a lot of people like it, and fair enough. I'm going to stop giving shit to Star Wars things, I think. But if people watch it, I'm fine with them watching it. I'm watching other things and enjoying them. Big Red Girl says, spiders here are no problems that the wolves can be. Yeah, but you can go to the toilet without a wolf biting you. Whereas um, redback spiders, particularly up and around Sydney where I grew up, are a real problem. People get bitten on the ass because if there's an outdoor toilet like an outside toilet, you can get bitten in the ass by a spider. Was I talking about Star Wars or organized religion? Isn't Star Wars an organized religion? See, look what you made me do, Lee. Yep, definitely hit the like button if you haven't already. How disillusion, oh, the great. It's good to see people interacting on the chat. Let's see. I've got some movie reference books that I really want to recommend as well. Now, this one, here's the way with movie reference books: either go to a secondhand bookshop if you have them around, or look on eBay. And if there's a particular movie maker, movie star type of movie that you like, you can find a lot of not too expensive reference books on eBay or in secondhand bookshops. This one I like. I've actually met the author John Baxter, a really great and unsung um, writer about film. He's now doing walking tours of Paris because he lives in Paris. But his biography of Stanley Kubrick, I recommend. There's some really interesting stuff about the weirdness of Stanley Kubrick. It's very forensic. It does a really nice job on it as well. If you're into Kubrick's movies at all, you need to read this one because it really does have a lot of fantastic stuff. He also did a biography of George Lucas if people are interested as well. But there's that. This one people are going to love. I picked this one up in America. Does it tell me where I picked it up? No, I could pay $3.50 for it. Hollywood Kryptonite, which is about the death of George Reeves, the guy who played Superman in the old Superman TV series. See if you can find yourself a copy of that because it's a really interesting look at my Superman, the Superman I saw as a kid, and that one's a nice read as well. It's got a lot of forensic stuff about the crime. It's a true crime book in a sense, but Hollywood Kryptonite is one I really recommend. Let's see what the chat's saying. I wish in America they would allow Indigenous Americans to tell their own stories and forgive me, Dances with Wolves. It's not a story from the viewpoint of Native. No, it wasn't. Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. No, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert is good. I saw Priscilla, Queen of the Desert for the first time. Excuse me. In Broken Hill, way out in Western New South Wales, across the road from the hotel where all the drag artists in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert were staying. And half of the audience in the cinema were extras in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, who went to the cinema to see themselves on the screen. I really like that. I like movies about Australia, which kind of embrace the landscape, but also tell, which for that time were quite transgressive stories. Priscilla, Queen of the Desert came out during the AIDS crisis, and so there was a lot of homophobia and transphobia at the time. But Priscilla, Queen of the Desert is a great film. I love it, and I think that again, it's that diversity of storytelling. Bob Crane's death is mysterious. Yeah, well, he got killed by that guy. So yeah. Lee says I picked up a good book from eBay. It was a British film critic, Barry Norman. Yeah, Barry Norman's a good film critic as well. Dogs in Space. Yeah, Australian film with Michael Hutchinson. Haven't seen it for a very long time, and yeah, Dogs in Space is kind of its time. I think it may have dated not too well. Not a villain of the story. If you want to be part of the chat, you're going to have to act a little bit better than you are. So much Native American will be wonderful to see that on the screen, but it's not their belief. Yeah, absolutely, and you've got to respect that. It's like here with the Indigenous Australians, and by the way, I am recording this on the land of the Kulin Nation. Um, the with Indigenous people, when an Indigenous person dies, depending on which Indigenous nation they're from, you can't mention their name or show their image after their death. It depends on what the family believes. So when an Indigenous person dies, who's very prominent in our society, you can mention them by name if the family agrees, and you can show their image and then show them respect like that. But if the family doesn't agree, and if their nation, their belief systems don't agree with it, you have to say like Mister Unipingu or whatever his name is, and not show his image, and but talk about what he did without referencing his name or his image. So we tend to respect that really well. And on our national broadcaster, there's always a recognition of the country in which the broadcast is being shown. So some of them will be in the Gadigal Nation, some of them will be in the Kulin Nation, some of them will be in other places, Rentin Nation, and things like that. So we get a lot of that um, as a part of how our culture and our country is respecting our Indigenous people a lot more than we used to. Yep, middle-aged good girl, you're right. But yeah, I mean, there are any number of good Australian movies seen from Indigenous viewpoint as well. Things, the two I really like are Mystery Road and Goldstone, with Aaron Patterson playing a police detective called Jay Swan. If you haven't seen Mystery Road and Goldstone, you really should. Yep, Echo, there was never a Bond movie that's been shot in Australia. Absolutely. Missed opportunity there, but we did get Mission Impossible too, but that's all. Barry Norman's dad, Leslie, was a fine movie director. Let me just look up Leslie Norman because I'm curious about this. Let's have a look here. Let's see what he did. Did the Shirley here in Australia as well. Let's have a look here. Summer of the 17th Dolly made in Australia as well. He did Dunkirk, he did X the Unknown. Uh, did, uh, yeah, he did a few different things. But yeah, Barry Norman, I like British movie writers as well. Kim Newman, I like a lot. And who else is there? There's another one. I'm just looking up at the shelf here. Matthew Sweet, I like a lot. He did a thing called Shepherd in Babylon, which is about all the scandals in the British film industry in the 20th century. Echo, sleep well. Have a good night, and thank you very much for being part of the channel. I really appreciate that, and it's always nice to hear from you. Yep, middle-aged good girl got Jill, so pet her. Jill hides really well. She's our kind of scaredy cat. She's black and very furry. And you know, some people say that cats aren't family, but for us they are. And if people aren't good with that, fair enough, fair enough. Different people around. Okay, go. Take care. Sleep well. Stay warm. Let's have a look here. So what else have I got? There's some more movie books. I just grabbed these off the shelf. This one people are going to like. Namor Aztec doesn't seem to understand it's not a new thing. Gene Roddenberry did a long time ago in the original Star Trek. I think that Namor works really well in Wakanda Forever, and I like that diversity. What were they going to do? Some people are talking about Keanu Reeves playing Namor. I don't think there's much nuance in that. Yeah, Lee. It is. It's nice to gain cats' trust, and cats aren't as sycophantic as dogs are. I mean, I like dogs, and I got to play with my sister's dog. We were up in Sydney earlier this month, but yeah, cats are themselves. They've got an innate nature. And if you mess with that, you mess with the cat. But yeah, we like cats. But anyway, this is another one of the kind of movie reference books before the internet that I really used to. Okay, all agree. I appreciate you like dogs, and I like dogs as well. We just don't have dogs. The Revenge of the Creature Features movie guide. I've got the Creature Features movie guide as well, but John Stanley's Revenge of the Creatures Features movie guide is one of those reference books that film buffs from a certain age always love it and remember. Tons of information, most of which you can find on IMDb, but there's something wonderful about just kind of thumbing through a book like this and just having fun with it. Uh, and just going, okay, I'm going to see if I can find that movie because this one doesn't get mentioned by anybody else. Like there's a 1935 movie in here called The Nitwits, which I've never heard of, and I just looked at The Ninth Guest, Ninja Terminator. Oh, I've got to find that one now. So these reference books are fantastic fun. That not so much, but these reference books are fantastic so much. Keith says we had a cat back in the '60s. It's no longer with us. If it was, you could probably sell it for a lot of money. But yeah, Creature Features movie guides I love a lot. I don't think stopping me from getting cats my cocker spaniel think that the litter trays are an all-you-can-eat buffet. Yeah, dogs eat shit, don't they? They're kind of like Marga fans. Uh, yeah, keep watching The Skies by Bill Warren. There's so many good reference books out there, and I think with the internet and that kind of ubiquitous distraction and ubiquitous access to information, just the fun of thumbing through a movie reference book is really something we need to do. Used copy of the Stanley Kubrick book I mentioned is available on eBay right now for less than $5. Absolutely, get them. Here's one I haven't read yet, but I really should. Yeah, well, agree. Even if you don't do movie reviews, it's kind of fun to just have them and thumb through them. Martin Freeman playing an American in the original Black Panther. He's got the accent down. The movie Cargo was Australian, but yeah, Martin Freeman does a good American accent. He's in the second Black Panther movie as well, and I think he does a good, solid job of it. Dwayne says we have cats and a wild opossum. Oh, it's good you got a marsupial. We don't have any marsupials, though. Not too far away from here, we do get some swamp wallabies and other kangaroo-like creatures wandering around. In fact, last night I had kangaroo sausage for dinner. I had some kangaroo sausages with Australian bush tomatoes mixed in. It was really yummy. Bush tucker is fantastic. So many different flavors of Australian foods. And some of them being exported as well. They're exporting some of the plants to grow Australian native plants these days. And if you can ever get a finger lime, which are these little things about the size of a finger, and they've got all these little kind of, they're almost like jelly balls inside them, which have got an intense citrus flavor. Finger limes are fantastic. But let's see what I got there. Namor's performance was good. Yeah, Tena Huerta is really good as Namor, and he has this thing. He's got the gravitas of the king of a country, without the macho, without the kind of preening. There's an intensity about the way he plays the character, which is really on point. And there's also a sadness about the character, and there are some implications as the movie progresses that Namor is in for an interesting future in the MCU, and that things in his kingdom of Talokan may be ready for some changes. Fried gator, I've had crocodile. I haven't had gator. Yeah, Kate Nelson. Yeah, the beard's coming back nicely. I was so happy about that because of my complex PTSD. Shaving the beard off really messed me around because it made me look more like my father, who's the person who gave me PTSD. So I'm very happy it's growing back nicely. The beard's not CGI. Look, try doing that in real time with CGI. Try doing that. Not CGI one tiny bit. Well, I was tempted to do CGI beard when I didn't have it because I can kind of motion track using the software I've got on editing, so I could have put a beard over it, but I didn't. Yeah, wattle seed chutney once, it's amazing. There's a substitute for coffee which is made from kind of roasted wattle seeds, and it's not bad. It doesn't quite taste like coffee, but it's not a bad coffee substitute as well. Let's see. Gator stew and sausage. Yeah, I mean, I've had emu. Emu's really nice as well. if you can get it. It tastes like pork, but no, it tastes like chicken, but it's got the texture of pork. Yes, middle-aged geek girl likes me without the beard, but for me, seriously, I had a psychological problem with it, and I'm never going to hide the fact that I've got PTSD, but I managed brilliantly with it. Look, here's another one. This one you're going to find easy. You won't have any problem finding this reference book. And I like it because it's old school. It's kind of harking back to a previous time. It's the novelization. It's a novel based on the film. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino, which steers a long way from the movie, but has a whole bunch of interesting insights and gossip about 1960s Hollywood. If you haven't read this, each chapter is a real kind of textbook on 1960s popular cinema. And it's a lot of fun. And it's got that kind of look of a 1960s, 1970s movie associated paperback. And I love that. Rattlesnake and Egg's pretty good. Had Fugu. Haven't had Fugu yet. Yeah, that retro look is fantastic, Professor Strangefinger. I've had bangers and mash. Yeah, I have. I had Cumberland sausage with mashed potato, onion gravy in a Yorkshire pudding when we were in England. We were actually in Glastonbury. It wasn't festival time, but we were in Glastonbury and had a pub meal. Fantastic. Bangers and mash is next level in England. Yeah, once upon a time in Hollywood, I like a lot too. I had a crocodile burger. It's virtually white and stays pale when cooked. It's just okay. Yeah, I think you've got to spice it, and if you use Australian indigenous spices, a lot of the things like bush tomato and the other Australian native spices, you can really enhance crocodile and kangaroo. No, it wasn't Keith David. Keith David did a lot of good voiceover work, but Kevin Conroy was the voice of Batman, and he did it incredibly well. And he'll be missed. I mean, he was one of those people who there are people in Hollywood, particularly voice acting and also in acting, that other people in the industry don't talk about. They don't talk, they don't kind of give them credit for what they do because they're assholes. And then there are people like Kevin Conroy that everybody gives credit to because he was very, very good at what he did. But he was also one of those really nice people who had all of his ducks lined up. He had a happy life. He was married with a husband. He really enjoyed his life. And yet he gave back to other people. Yeah, well, Greg, yeah, hungry for. I can go down to the supermarket here. I can pick up a couple of kangaroo steaks and sear them in a cast iron frying pan. Really like kangaroo. Middle-aged geek girl doesn't like it much, but I really like it. It's a little bit like beef, but it's got a slight gaminess to it. But it's one of those flavors, one of those kind of meats that you can enhance a lot with a little bit of hot sauce and a little bit of pepper, and it really brings it up. I think we should do a lot more of that kind of food here because kangaroos, because of the fact that there are no real predators for them, they're becoming almost a pest in some places, and so eating them is a sustainable kind of agriculture. Have I ever shared the LPs? I've done one video where I did some LPs. I really should do that in the next live stream. I'll drag out a whole bunch of movie-related LPs from the LP collection and do that. I've really got to set up my new turntable as well. I've got a new turntable, but I'm going to basically rejig the mess that is a man cave before I do that. They tried to tell people here in America that Outback Steakhouse was actually serving roomie. I went to Outback Steakhouse across the road from Apple headquarters in Cupertino back in '98. And there was nothing Australian on the menu apart from Foster's beer, which is an export beer that no Australian drinks because it's shit. And so friends took me there as a joke, and there's nothing Australian in Outback Steakhouse. So if you're in North America and you think there is, you're wrong. It really is purely a marketing thing. Yeah, Skippy the bush kangaroo, really popular here. But yeah, I mean, you've eaten kangaroo, middle-aged geek. Or don't try to pretend otherwise. Yeah, Skippy was crazy popular. In fact, I think you can still get the DVDs of some of the Skippy episodes. No, Onion Blossom isn't Australian. Australian, if you want Australian food, you can have carpet bag steak is Australian. That's where you slit a steak and you jam lots of oysters into it and then fry it. That's Australian. There are any number of Australian foods. There's a lot of bush tucker stuff. I once had witchetty grub soup, which are these grubs that live underneath the bark on gum trees. They're about that big. And I had witchetty grub soup once, and witchetty grub soup is really great. It tastes really nutty. It's almost got a peanut flavour to it because they eat a lot of cellulose and they eat the gum tree bark and things. But yeah, they're about that big. You can pan fry them as well and eat them. And it is bush tucker. Yeah, absolutely. Finger limes, middle-aged giggle. Finger limes are next level. They're intense. Those little fingers shaped things of with lots of little bulbs of kind of lime seeds in there, and you get this intense citrus flavor from them. They are crazily good in cooking, but they're really fun to eat by themselves. Yeah, Anthony, Psychotronic Encyclopedia. I've got that here as well, but it's kind of not really accessible. Ostrich I haven't eaten, but I have eaten emu, and emu is good eating meat. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was a fun read, absolutely. Let me see what else I've got here. Now, these two I picked up crazy cheap again. I was in a thrift store in Sydney. Excuse me, I just got to have a drink of water and a cough. So I'll hit the mute button. Not doing a cooking video, Lee, because setting up the cameras and all that stuff is a bloody nightmare. Rockets is a type of muffin here in Texas. Your teeth aren't healthy. I dare you to eat one or like curing a brick. Why would you want to chew a brick? Are they tasty? But anyway, these ones I picked up for like $3 each. The Faber Book of French Cinema, which is a classic book all about French cinema up until around the turn of this century. I keep going back to this reference book to find things, and I really like it. It's a quality. It's an English reference book, and I found this one as well for like a $2, which has an introduction by Francois Truffaut, and it is the great French films. And it goes back to there's the back cover, which has a whole bunch of stuff. When I want to look into the cinema of other places, I love getting these reference books, and I try to find the movies. And there's a lot of these ones good because it's got pictures, but it's also got a commentary about each one of the films. And I love those. What I want to have as far as cooking great recipes from movies. Has anybody seen Big Night, the movie that Stanley Tucci and Tony Shalhoub did about a pair of Italian brothers who come to America in the 50s and open a restaurant? There's a thing called a timpano they make, which is basically a whole bunch of pastry on the outside, and then layers of sausage meats and cheeses and tomato passata and things like that all the way through it. And they put a lid on it of pastry, and they throw in noodles as well. And then you cook it for hours and hours, and then just cut it open, and all of these great ingredients come out. Big Night's one of my favorite food movies. William Thompson says, "I'm on a diet, and you're making me hungry. Even the grubs sound delicious. They are. Witchy grubs are delicious." Have I seen Goliath Waits with Frank Ocean and Christopher Lee? Yeah, I've seen that. It's really weird. It's a TV two-parter, Goliath Waits. Not sure if the science hold up, but it was a weird little thing that American TV did in the 70s. Yeah, that room looks so much like the entire house, to be honest. Yeah, I try to keep this in the man cave. I don't succeed necessarily, but middle-aged gig girl and I have our own zones in the house. where we put our stuff. And one of the summer projects is see all these boxes. They're all full of books in the corner here. And so I'm putting more of my books into the boxes and putting them across the back wall of the man cave and then kind of open spacing this bit. And I'm going to do that so that I've got more room for the things I want to use. I'm not doing a cooking thing. Get that out of your brains. Richard watched several Dick Maas films. He's a director in the Netherlands, and 3 films I saw were Amsterdam, Saint and Prey. I've heard of Amsterdam and I want to see it, but again, getting access here is problematic for a lot of these films. I really should try harder, but at the moment, Umbrella Entertainment and Imprint are giving me freebies, so I've got to do a lot of those things. That's yeah, that one is actually a Corvette from the year I was born, 1957, and we picked that up for like $10 at a roadhouse on the way back from Sydney. Let me just grab it. I'll grab it for you just because you've asked. Okay, it's actually a Chevrolet Corvette 124 from 1957. I got that for $10 because they obviously couldn't sell them. In fact, middle-aged geek girl bought it for me. But I love the teal color as well. Really well-made little model. Where are they made? Made in China. But yeah, that's it's nicely detailed, and I like it partly because of the color. It is a sweet car. There's a whole bunch of them, and I think they were selling for like $25 originally, but this one was down to $10. So I got it. Yes, you did. It was it in Goulburn or was it in Gundagai? I forget which one of the 2 towns it was in. But it was interesting. We drove up to Sydney, which is like 900 kilometres, and we drove back again. We we got there on Friday, came back on Monday, so there's a lot of driving there, and all the places we were going through on the way down were later flooded because we've had a ton of rain here, and all the ground's saturated, so the rain's just rolling off the top of the soil into the rivers and creeks, and so it was hit and miss. We saw a lot of flooded rivers driving down. Yeah, we do have a main channel, which is it was in Goulburn, yeah. So we do have a main channel, a joint channel, which we don't use, but it still exists. If I read Keith Laumer back in the day, absolutely. I read a lot of his stuff. Lisa's Ownish, if you want Chevrolet Métis, which is actually a rebadged Daewoo. Okay. My mum's ex-husband had no, my mum's second husband, sorry, Brian, who died, had a Chevy Impala as his car. And Chevy Impalas are great because even as an adult, I could sort of lay across the back seat and my head didn't and feet didn't touch the doors. Really great car. He had it for a long time and kept it in the garage and sold it off eventually. But yeah, Chevy Impalas were very popular. There are Australian cars that are really popular too. Things like Holden Monaros, which they don't make anymore. But if anybody who had like a 1970s Holden Monaro, which was a great Australian muscle car, they're selling them for $80,000 now, even if they do need work on them. What's the name of the joint channel, Sal? Can you post a link to the joint channel for me? Because Lee wants to know. There's not much content on there, but we're probably going to do something. Australia's like Texas, a road trip's a serious endeavour. Yeah, I mean, I've driven across Australia once upon a time, and it's as far as going from, say, New England to San Diego, going from Sydney to Perth. I actually went from Melbourne to Perth. But it's great. People say it's boring driving across the desert because about 2/3 to 3/4 of the drive from Sydney to Perth or Melbourne to Perth is desert. But the desert constantly changes. I mean, there are any number of things. There are kangaroos there. You can see emus. We've got wild camels here in Australia, so you'll see wild camels as well, and wedge-tailed eagles. And yeah, there are some nice rail journeys, but they're crazy expensively. You'd be better off driving it. I want to drive across Australia with middle-aged geek girl, but she won't do it with me because we've flown to Perth over on the west coast of Australia. But it's one of those things where it's going to take you 3.5 days to drive across there, 3.5 days to drive back, and yeah, It's an adventure, and I want to do it again. Do I have a favourite oceanside place that I frequent? When we're in Sydney, I always go to Maroubra Beach in Sydney. It's kind of southeastern suburb of Sydney, and it hasn't been touristy. It's not touristy at all. And I went down there a couple of weeks ago when we were in Sydney and did a walk along the beach and along the waterfront. And it was really great to do. There's some nice coffee shops along there. There's some nice cafes to have breakfast, and it still hasn't been touristed up. And if you go into Sydney, don't go to Bondi, don't go to Coogee. Head down to Maroubra. Keith says, have been watching for 60 years. Last month I watched two of the worst movies I've ever seen, Journey to the Seventh Planet and House of the Gorgon. I've seen Journey to the Seventh Planet. Yeah, it's bad. It's so bad that it's fascinatingly bad. And it's got the worst theme song of any science fiction movie ever. Haven't seen House of the Gorgon. Let me have a quick Google of that. I know this is fascinating for everybody to watch me Google things. House of the Gorgon, 2019. Let's see who's in there. Caroline Munro, Martine Beswick, Veronica Carlson, Christopher Neame. Basically, they got everybody who was in a Hammer film and still has a pulse in that film. I'm going to have to watch it now. I'll find a copy of it. But yeah, it's one of those, like I said in the title of this live stream, nostalgia is a trap. And probably something like House of the Gorgon is a good indication that the reasons why nostalgia is a trap. It's, I think that there's really a Eric Banner, Kay Nelson. Eric Banner did a documentary about his relationship with his Holden race car. Good Australian actor. If you can find a recent Eric Banner film called The Dry, DRY, really solid film, a really nice crime murder mystery. And yeah, Eric Banner is one of those actors who started out doing light comedy. He did sketch comedy in Australia for years. And then he did Chopper, the movie. And since then, he's done some really interesting work across the world and here in Australia. House of the Gorgon gets a lower IMDb rating than Plan 9 from Outer Space. Two Witches from Arrow Video. Let me see. I don't know Two Witches, but I'm going to find out. 2021 Two Witches. Let me have a look here. Oh, it's one of those films. An aging malevolent witch intercedes in the lives of two young women. Well, that's an original concept. Yeah, we once saw Chopper Reed. He was at a kind of festival we went to, and yeah, he how much of him is real, how much of him is made up is kind of up there, a little bit debatable. He doesn't seem to have been a happy man. But let's see more reference books. No, let's not get. Let's not do that. Let's just do that. This one, research did these interesting book. Yeah, middle-aged good girls are doing banners autographed. I didn't know that. Okay. Research did these interesting books around the 80s and a whole bunch of different subjects, including this one called Incredibly Strange Films. Now, I love this reference book. It's got a whole bunch of stuff and essays about things. They've got essays about Spider Baby, interviews with Frank Henenlotter, who did Basket Case. Let's see what else we got. Daughter of Darkness, God Told Me To, The Wizard of Gore, Young Playthings. There's an interview with George Romero. LSD films, biker films, juvenile delinquent films, beach party films, Santo Edward Jr., sexploitation films, education films, and interviews with Russ Meyer and Larry Cohen and Doris Wishman. See if you can find a copy of that. It's really, really fun to read this one. And this is the kind of thing that probably led a lot of people into those kind of sleazy exploitation films of a certain time. And research did a really nice job of it as well. And the back cover's got that bit from Maniac, a Hammer film, which I like a lot too. So let's see what's the chat doing. Has anybody got movie recommendations? And they better not be Star Wars. Have I read Harbor Wonderland and the End of the World by Haruki Murakami? No, but I'm going to copy that and open up a tab with that in it. So I've just tabbed that one. So thank you for the recommendation. Yeah, it's called Incredibly Strange Films. It's by Research. You should try to find that. Research did a whole bunch of things. There's also a guide to the human body, which is really interesting. It tells you what's in poo, besides all of the poo stuff. It's yeah, they did a whole bunch of really kind of out there 1980s books, and any of the research guides are really fantastic, fun reads, and they were very different than a lot of the kind of reference books were coming out at the time. Let's see what else got. This one, the definitive guide to the cinema of fear horror, James Marriott and Kim Newman. I like a good chunky book, and this is definitely a chunky book. Lots of pictures, but there are lots of foreign language horror films that get mentioned in here as well. This one's a rock solid reference book for horror fans. And again, part of it is to read about the films and then find copies of them. And a lot of them are increasingly, there's a lot of good stuff coming out on physical media. The Spirit of 45 documentary by Ken Loach. I like some of Ken Loach's stuff. So again, excuse me if I'm kind of looking like I'm not doing anything because I'm actually opening tabs and pasting these suggestions in so that I don't lose them. Spirit of 45, 2013 documentary focuses on and celebrating the radical changes in post-war Britain under Labour government of Clement Attlee. Oh, I'm up for watching that one. Thank you very much for that one, Lee. Appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm always up for recommendations too. There are times when I do get a little spare spending money, and I'm up for reference books. This one I've had for a long time, and you're probably going to have trouble finding it because it's from the 1970s. A pictorial history of sex in the movies. You can tell it's got um, Marlon Brando and Bridget Bardot and Jane Russell and Betty Grable and things like that. And it is up until the 1970s. This is a pictorial history of how sex and sexuality have been portrayed in cinema. Let me see if I can open it up to a page that doesn't have nudity in it. And they even talk about what was happening during the Hays Code and things like that. Yeah, this one, and on the back, of course, it's got Jane Fonda and Barbarella. But yeah, these movie reference books taught me a lot about cinema and about how to analyze and view cinema. And there are two ways to look at movies. There's passive, where you let it happen to you and it kind of flows over you. And I'm not criticizing that. It's just one way to enjoy cinema. The other way is to actively lean into cinema and lean into understanding subtext and mise en scène and all that other stuff, and really analyzing what you're seeing as much as you're enjoying it. And people can think, and some people do, and I've had some conversations about this. Some people just see movies as escapism and just see movies as a release from the day to day. And I can appreciate that. And I understand that people are busy and some people just want that kind of movie. But I think having movies that you can really analyze and think about and understand at a deeper level, you get much more bang for your buck and much more value for your money if you kind of cultivate those skills to analyze what you're watching as much as you are experiencing it. There's parts of the films that get you in the moment, and there are things like the first view of Talokan in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, which I enjoyed in the moment. I analysed it afterwards, but in the moment I was filled with the sense of wonder about this. And but yeah, diving deeper into movies is something that I found rewarding, and it doesn't take away from the experience of enjoying a movie. It's it's kind of like the movie is the meat. Just watching the movie is the meat. But if you put it together with a nice crusty roll and you put some really nice salsa down and all that kind of thing, you can enhance the meat. Killer of Sheep from 1978. I've heard of that. I can't recall it offhand. But again, I'm going to open a tab. The History of Horror with Mark Gatiss. Absolutely. Professor Strangefinger. Yeah, Mark Gatiss is doing some interesting stuff and has, let's see, Killer of Sheep. Charles Burnett, Urban African American Life in What? Yeah, I would be up for that. I would be up for definitely watching that one. Devil's Men, otherwise known as The Land of the Minotaur. Only because my brother-in-law was a producer. Are you encouraging me to watch movies because of nepotism, Kay Nelson? But yeah, Killer of Sheep Alone. The other one I would recommend is if you want to see a good concert film, and there are any number of concert films. Wattstax, Wattstax, from the 1960s, I think it is, which was about a big concert that Stax Records did in the Watts area of Los Angeles. Fantastic movie documentary. And it talks to, this is after the Watts riots, and it talks to a lot of kind of civic leaders at the time in the African American community, as well as giving us this real sense of being at the concert in such a good way. It's incredibly well edited, and the footage is great, and the music is on point. Wattstax is fantastic. Yeah, the Mark Gatiss version of Dracula didn't work. I suppose he had to have a go at it. He was a big Dracula fan. But Dracula is one of those things where there's not much meat on the bone at the moment. It's been done so many ways by so many people that we kind of need to put it aside for a while until the world changes a bit more. And then maybe reapproach and reevaluate Dracula. I think that we've had a lot of Dracula movies. We've had a lot of Frankenstein movies. And I think that we kind of need to put a stake through Dracula movies for just a while there. There are any number of them we can go back and enjoy, but new ones, unless you can bring something totally unexpected to the game, there's not much point in doing them in a modern context. And I don't know whether there'd be much money. Project Grizzly, is that the guy who made the grizzly proof suit and ended up getting killed? William? Dracula versus Predator. Yeah, I'm not sure that'd work particularly. Having supernatural versus science fiction. It's an odd mix, and I'm not sure whether it's something that could work. Dracula versus Emmanuel. Who knows? But yeah, Carry On Dracula. I think that could work if they got a whole bunch of English comedians now and made a new Carry On movie with Dracula. That'd work. Hi, Damien. You're in the chat. Thank you for coming along, mate. You are buying a lot more things from Umbrella and Imprint than I am, and I always like seeing the stuff that you're picking up. Yeah, Carry On Dracula. I think that's definitely the way to go. Who would you get to be in it? What modern English would? Alexis Sales still around. If you're on YouTube, check out Alexis Sales' podcast. When during lockdowns he did podcasts while bicycling around London, and he does a podcast now where he talks to interesting people about interesting things. Alexis Sale would be good in a new Dracula movie. Who else would we get comedian wise? James Acaster probably would be fine. The story of Amble, it's like Spinal Tap, but true rock and roll weirdness. I think I saw that. Joe Lycett, yeah, you get Joe Lycett in there as well. Um, yeah, and you could get people like Diane Morgan. She'd be great in a Carry On Dracula movie. And well, you don't have to mess with classic Carry On movies. I mean, they did botch the Centennians remakes, but there's nothing to say you couldn't have modern silliness in a Carry On series. I think it's about time that we can do that. I'll give you a recommendation if you want to see some comedy stuff on YouTube. Look for a 15-minute series that BBC did a couple of years ago called Mandy with Diane Morgan in it, where she plays a really hopeless woman who gets involved in all sorts of weirdness. Morgan wrote and directed all the episodes. They're 15 minutes long, so they're bite sized, but they are crazy funny. Yep, Julian Clary was in Carry On Columbus, absolutely. Yeah, Mike Wozniak, and any number of people. Anybody except Michael McIntyre. If there's an English comedian at the moment that I don't like, it's Michael McIntyre. Yeah, Barry Murphy. What's next? Fabulous. Moody VHS of NTSC VHS. Yeah, What's next? Even if you can't see the movie, just the soundtrack to What's next is fantastic. But yeah, I mean, there were any number of those great concert films at the time. Fubar 2, Electric Boogaloo, William. Let me have a look at Fubar 2. I'm going to open a tab on that as well. I will have to check that out. Fubar 2 looks like it's one of those kind of low key comedies I could really get into. But yeah, concert films are really great. I'm going to have to rewatch the Woodstock documentary at some stage. So those comedians really miss the DVD managers. Yeah, at least it's not like Keith Lemon the movie. I got that in a mystery box, and that's probably the worst movie. Am I a fan of John Waters movies? Yeah, Pink Flamingos. Yeah, I like John Waters movies. I think that let me have a look here. Just give me a few moments. Talk amongst yourselves. John Waters is making another movie. I heard too. Not don't have any deets about it, but yeah. Problem with Pink Flamingos is it left a bad taste in my mouth at the end of it. The Book Group TV series was quite good. Yeah, I mean, there's so many good TV series. Apparently, he invented the term teabagging. I thought it was computer gamers who invented that, but probably not. Cecil B. Demented. Yeah, I kind of like Serial Mom as well. I like Hairspray. I don't like the musical version of it, but I like the original version of Hairspray. Yeah, Mandy series is on YouTube. Thanks. Now I have something to watch later today. Yeah, all the Greg. Mandy is fun. Particularly when she's got like a tattoo of her ex-husband on her back, and her friend the beautician takes it off with a blowtorch. Mandy is kind of low key, wild, weird, and I like what it does with not too much budget, but a very interesting, creative person. And Diane Morgan is the person who does the Philomena Kunk stuff for Charlie Brooker's series. Crybaby is a guilty pleasure. Fun story about Tracy Lords in the commentary. Okay, cool. Yeah, the musical of Hairspray I didn't like, but the original I liked a lot. I think that was kind of. I understand why John Waters sold the rights to it, so that people can make a musical, and they're doing that a lot too. Amateur and small theatre companies are doing Hairspray the musical. I saw a poster for a local version of it not too long ago. Miranda was good too. Yeah, absolutely. Miranda was fun. I really like the fact that women bring a different energy to comedy, particularly in TV series. And I like what many of them do with it. I think that, yeah, guys really had the run of it for such a long time. And then women comedians and women creative people found their voices. Things like Fleabag, Phoebe Waller Bridge, I like that a lot too. And just having that different perspective and that different voice is something I really like. There's now a Japanese version of the musical Hairspray. I want to see Japanese people do Japanese things, and I want to see Korean people do Korean things. Um, I'm by the way, Damien, I'm picking up some of those Torreson movies that you steered me towards as well. So I'm going to be my next spending frenzy is going to be getting a whole bunch of those from CD Japan. And if people haven't seen the Torreson movies, they're this weird Japanese series of movies about a kind of itinerant peddler in 60s, 70s, and 80s Japan, who keeps visiting his family and keeps falling in love with the wrong women and is totally hopeless, but everybody around him benefits from his presence. And they made like 42 of these movies over a very long period of time. It's the longest movie series in history, which has the same actor playing the same role in it. I did a video back in the day about Tora-san, and I'll see if I can find a copy of it, so I can link it here. Just give me a few seconds. Here it is. Found it because I have major Google foo. That's the video. So check that out later on. My video about Tora-san, because I love finding things like that, like movie series that are crazily popular, and yet people who don't speak the language that they were made in don't know them. Do I think there are too many horror movies these days? No, I think we live in horrible times, and that's been reflected in the media. Not all horror movies are to my taste. Not all horror movies I'm going to like or watch, but they seem to be doing well. I think A24 is doing some interesting stuff, like their Invisible Man movie, which is about spousal abuse as much as anything else. And I did really enjoy Nope, which is the Jordan Peele movie. I like what that did with UFO stuff. I think that there are. It's like anything else. It's Sturgeon's law. 95% of everything is shit. The trick is to find the 5%. That's part of what I do with the channel, or at least try to do with the channel, is to try to steer people away from the 95% towards the 5%. Have I seen Men yet? No, I haven't, but I do want to see Men. I think that that's an interesting concept, and I want to see where it goes with it. Yeah, Middle-aged Geek Girl and I watched Nope, and we both enjoyed it a lot. I haven't seen his previous one. What was it? Up? No, it wasn't Up. What was that previous Jordan Peele one about the people living underground? I've gone totally blank because I've been live streaming for a couple of hours now. But Us, yeah, that's what it was. Us. But yeah, I think that there's room for all kinds of movies, and I think that people's uh, back in the day when I was a kid, everybody went and saw the same movies, and they kind of there were the big blockbusters, the tentpole movies, and there were the smaller films. And now, because of access and our ability to see so many different things, um, the audience for movies is balkanizing. It's moving into different realms. So there are home movie fans. There are people who are watching science fiction and superhero movies. There are people who are watching art house films and quality films and going to film festivals. We've got a whole bunch of different realms of film appreciation, much more than they had before we got digital and before we got physical media. And that's kind of okay. And so, if there's a horror film audience and a horror film engages with them, great. If it breaks out in other kinds of film buffs, watch it, even better. It's a bit hard to say there are too many of one kind of film because ultimately that's determined by the marketplace. And increasingly, the marketplace is streaming services. And streaming services are endlessly hungry for content. And I'm kind of okay with that. If I get over horror movies, I've got 57 other genres and 130 other countries' cinema to enjoy. And that kind of makes me go, okay, if you guys want to watch 55 horror movies a month, go for it. It's not for me, but I'm never going to criticize you for it. Enjoy what you enjoy and tell us about them. Yes, well, there's no use knowing stuff if you don't tell other people about it. Secret knowledge is bullshit. No, Sal is middle-aged geek girl, and it's nice to think there was a menage a trois happening, but unfortunately there isn't. Yeah, we have lots of great stuff available in our streaming. Another reason why I collect physical media. It's important. Yeah, problem is with streaming is it'll disappear like that, and you won't be able to find it again. Yeah, and Damien, yeah, a good mixture of film and TV, absolutely. It's hard to balance sometimes, particularly when you do what I do, and people are starting to give me Blu-rays to review, which I love, and I feel incredibly honoured by. But it kind of implies an obligation to concentrate on that. But yeah, it's uh, physical media. I have a great love for because for the first, let's say, not quite half of my life, there was no physical media available until VHS came along. The only way to watch movies was to stay up late on television, wait till they turned up in a cinema again, even if you had to travel across town. I travelled 50 kilometres when I was a teenager to see a movie that was showing in one cinema on the other side of Sydney. I would go from Liverpool in the west of Sydney to Rose Bay in the east of Sydney to see a movie because that's the only way to see that movie. And so I will never not have an appreciation of physical media and the fact that I can hold in my hand something that's not going to go away. It's not ephemeral like watching something on TV or watching it in a cinema screen. And I'm never going to not love that. Whereas streaming services are taking us back to a business model where things are only available for a certain period of time. And that's the problem. Is unless they have a physical manifestation, it's easy for that part of cinema and that part of cinema history, and we are creating cinema history all the time, to be lost. Things like The Other Side of the Wind, the Orson Welles movie that Netflix finally edited together based on Orson Welles' notes and all of the media they had. The movie had never been assembled. That's appeared on Netflix. But when Netflix takes it off their stream, where does it go? It'd be nice if a Criterion edition appeared for it, and if Netflix were able to liaise with Criterion and we can get a physical media copy of it. We could get a copy that people could appreciate ongoing because I think it's a great film and it's Wells' last film, and it's for me it's a work of genius. No, I never sleep. I don't think that's an option. I enjoy sleep. Sleep lets me refresh myself to do more videos. The Burrow low budget movie by John McNaughton. Yeah, low budget can work. I think that low budget has its advantages and it has its challenges as well. Low budget lets you makes you more imaginative, I think, for a filmmaker who does it well. And you've got to find other ways to tell the story within that limitation, and that can lead to some really good cinema. I mean, things like Chris Marker's La Jetée in the 1960s, it's mostly still pictures put together with a narrative, with only moments of animated film, and yet it's really, really interesting. And of course, it led to Terry Gilliam's 12 Monkeys. Got a new record changer. What kind? I don't have a new record changer. I've got a new turntable and speakers. It's just a fairly cheap one I picked up from Aldi. I don't really want to spend a lot of money on audio equipment. I want to spend it on movies. But yeah, and I've got quite a small and basic turntable just behind there. But this other one looked like a higher quality, so I picked it up. And yeah, turntables. It's kind of like Blu-ray players. I want to kind of hoard a couple of Blu-ray players in case they get bunged and they stop making them. The Hidden, yeah, absolutely. The Hidden's a good one too. Good, solid 80s action film. They made a second one which wasn't as good. But again, it's the concept. It's in the writing, it's in the production, it's in the director's imagination, it's in the actors really getting you on board with the project. Low budget can be, it doesn't tend to be an okay low budget movie. There's either really good ones or there's really bad ones. There are probably exceptions to that. But for the most part, I really like low budget filmmaking that pulls the rabbit out of a hat and then pulls a whole herd of rabbits out of the hat. That always gets my love. Damien says, when I was living in New Zealand in the early 70s, I travelled with a friend by train to the next town to the local cinema to see Red Sun. Yeah, I mean, we used to travel crazy amounts of distance. I mean, I was living in Liverpool in Sydney and over in Bondi Junction in the eastern suburbs. There was a movie that only showed horror movies. There was a cinema that only showed horror movies. And every weekend I would travel there to watch 2 or 3 horror movies and travel back again, like 50 kilometres on public transport. 2 changes of trains and a bus, I think it was at that stage. But yeah, let me do one final movie reference book. Let me find one. Yeah, we'll go this one. Kim Newman. I really like Kim Newman as a writer. Nightmare movies, horror movies on the screen since the 1960s. Chunky, a big chunkus of a book. But Kim Newman's a really fine writer of fiction as well as movie reference stuff. And I like having Kim's books. And Nightmare Movies is probably the definitive one. You should get a copy of that one. Let's see. This is just me. My first collection of physical media began by buying soundtracks on film, followed by books and comics based on films in the VHS. Yeah, that's pretty much the arc we all went through. I've still got some of my movie tie-ins books as well. Keith says I have trouble with all these superhero movies. Basically, I think they're all the same. Am I missing something? Yeah, I think it may be. I don't mean any disrespect in saying that. I think there are superhero movies. Superheroes are just the bottom layer of things. The stories you tell on top of that, and the way you tell the stories, and the way you inhabit those stories. DC is doing this a lot worse than Marvel, but I think things like Ms. Marvel I enjoyed because it was a story about the child of migrants who get superpowers. And is still living in a migrant community in America. That worked well for me. Excuse me for a sec. Black Panther is about, it's almost a utopian movie, the second Black Panther movie. It's a utopian movie because it's about what if the most powerful nations in the world, and Talokan and Wakanda are in the MCU. Excuse me. So Talokan and Wakanda are the most technologically advanced civilizations in the MCU, on Earth at least. What if the most powerful nations in the world weren't assholes, weren't colonizers, weren't evangelical about spreading their worldview to everybody else? That's a kind of interesting thing to play with within a superhero narrative. That's saying, how do we make the world a better place? Wouldn't it be nice if the most powerful countries in the world weren't sociopathic? And that narrative is woven into the second Black Panther movie in a very powerful way. And I like that. I like that idea of what if there were nations that were better and yet powerful? That is something I can really get on board with. Yep, Kim Newman. I recommend you get anything Kim Newman writes. Sorry, it's been 2 hours, so my voice is going up. 5 minute warning. Yeah, middle aged geek girl. Last minute questions and super chats. Happy to do that. Damien says in New Zealand there was a cinema, very grand cinema, did 50s science fiction, sword and sandal, and Japanese monster movies. Yeah, I was so lucky living in Sydney when I did, because the cinemas in the city were fantastic palaces of movies. They made them beautiful. They made them wonderful places to be, and they had Roman columns and statues along the sides, all sorts of shit. Really, a fantastic time to watch cinema then. I didn't appreciate it as much at the time because I had to travel a lot and I had very little money. Okay, Professor Strangefinger, take care. Superago versus Diabolicus, a good Italian superhero movie. Good in a bad way. It is silly as hell. Yep, all the 70 cinemas in New Zealand were gone too. Yeah, so many of Sydney's cinemas are gone. In fact, there's a project at the moment that somebody's done to recreate George Street in Sydney when all the cinemas were still there in virtual reality. They've actually created a virtual reality version of that, and they're kind of still processing that and doing immense amounts of work to give people an idea what it was like to be able to walk down George Street in Sydney and see all these fantastic cinemas showing all these fantastic movies at the time. Yeah, a lot of the old cinemas in the UK now, bingo halls. Yes, a lot of them here are other kinds of businesses, carpet warehouses, and all sorts of other things. Too many of the buildings have been torn down. If I was as rich as Elon Musk, I would go around and buy up all of those buildings and turn them back into cinemas and wear the loss. Because I think that there are certain models that really work in resurrecting cinemas. George R. Martin is doing it in Albuquerque. He resurrected cinemas, and they're showing art house films and cult movies and things like that. Tarantino did it with the New Beverly in Los Angeles, and that's showing they don't do any digital; it's all on film, 33 millimeter minimum. And the Alamo Draft House in Texas is doing it as well. If I had the money, I would do that across every city in Australia. Find the old flea pits, renovate them, do them up, and get them going again as cinemas, and to carry on to new generations that love of going to the movies and sitting down and eating your popcorn and whatever else you want to eat, watching film as a group thing. And of course, you've got to be careful with COVID because we're getting some more COVID waves here in Australia, and people are a little bit wary of that. But I really like that idea of retaining heritage. And from a lot of the 20th century, much of our cultural heritage is cinema. And much of our cultural heritage was the way we were able to see other parts of the world through cinema, particularly somewhere here in Australia. Good night, FG. Yeah, it's if I had the money, and of course I never will, but if I had the money, I would love to do that at least once, and to really give back to something that's given me so much. And anytime I see an old flea pit, and there are still a few of them going. There's the Sun here in Melbourne, in Yarraville. There's the Astor over at St Kilda. There are still a couple of them holding on and still doing interesting, fun stuff. I think there's a couple down in Geelong, about 80 kilometres from here, and a few others. But old theatres are a part of our cultural heritage, and I don't think they're appreciated enough. Too many of our places, here in Australia at least, the influence of real estate agents and kind of people who want to renovate and change everything are really um, not the best. Okay, so Kate Nelson, thank you very much for joining the live stream. Keith, best way to see movies in cinema. I've got to end the live stream now because Middle Aged Geek Girl will go mad at me if I go too far over. But I think that's a good place to end the live stream as well. On that note of optimism and on that note of love for cinemas and for movies. Um, okay, see you, Damien. Take care. Digital pollution, always a pleasure. And Lee, absolutely. So you guys will take care of yourselves. I'm going to go and get some lunch now. I may even have a fourth coffee, though I don't usually do that. But this has been a nice one. Keith, thank you. Hunter Scales, thank you. Euler Greek, thank you. And that with that, Clone of Clark, thank you. And I will catch you all guys on the next video. Take care.